When I'm competing in a NASCAR race, I'm constantly observing and analyzing track conditions and assessing what other drivers are up to. It's not enough that I know what I'm doing. I need to know what everybody else is doing too. If I don't, the results can be messy. That's where defensive driving comes in. You may not be a professional race driver like myself, but you still have to share the road with some pretty crazy drivers. That's why you need to stay alert and look out for trouble. You can't assume that the other drivers will always do the right thing. In fact, you must be ready if the other drivers do the worst possible thing, because sometimes they do. So not only do you have to watch out for yourself, you also have to watch out for the other guy. Anticipating trouble while driving doesn't mean you have to be constantly uptight behind the wheel. It just means you plan ahead and know what to do when an emergency arises. What is defensive driving? Defensive driving means being aware of everything happening around you, not only taking responsibility for yourself and your actions, but also keeping an eye on the other drivers and being aware of extreme situations that could put you and others in danger. Defensive driving starts with a frame of mind that tells you to give yourself space, anticipate, and know your options. So let's go over some defensive driving skills that will come in handy when you're behind the wheel. Defensive driving tactics encourage you to think about potentially dangerous, real-life situations beforehand and come up with tactics to avoid or at least manage these hazardous situations. In order to avoid collisions on the road, you need to give yourself space to maneuver and time to react. One rule of thumb is to use a 3-second rule to determine a safe distance between you and the other vehicles so that you can always stop safely. As you approach an underpass, for example, watch when the vehicle in front of you passes through, then count out the seconds until you reach the underpass. In slow-moving traffic, allow 3 seconds minimum. Over 40 miles per hour at least 4 seconds. Sometimes you might think of it as 1 car length for every 10 miles per hour. 60 miles an hour, 6 car lengths. On the racetrack, it's expected that you'll be on the guy's rear bumper all the time, sometimes even pushing the guy around the racetrack a little bit. Out on the freeways or any kind of roadways, that doesn't work. You always need to keep a safe distance between you and the vehicle in front of you. Just a split second is all it takes for something bad to happen, and if you're too close, it gives you less time to get slowed down, and it could be your chance of avoiding accident by just a couple feet. So always try to keep a safe distance between you and the vehicle in front. Never follow too close. There are many situations when you should increase the space to ensure your safety. These include when visibility is poor, when driving on slick roads, driving at night, and when you're unsure of other drivers on the road. For the way road conditions are, whether it be fog, rain, or whatever, the faster you go, the longer it's going to take you to stop. Well, as you're driving down the road, highway driving, the traffic's all moving steadily, but you have to anticipate the fact that the traffic patterns may switch or may stop at any given time for no reason. So you always have to be looking around, always checking the mirrors, be aware of what's going on around you at all times. You should be checking your mirrors constantly. Always be aware of what is on your right, your left, and behind you. Check the road ahead. What's on the horizon? What's happening in front of the car ahead of you? Look at the big picture. What can you do to anticipate trouble on the road? Let's say you're driving in rainy weather. Driving in the rain means reduced visibility. So turn on your windshield defroster so you can see better, and turn on your headlights to increase your visibility and make sure others see you. A car needs 2 to 3 times more stopping distance on wet pavement, so allow extra following distance between cars. And use center lanes. Avoid outside lanes where water collects at curbside. Tune in to radio and television weather reports to know where flood warning areas or traffic congestion may be located. If possible, avoid these areas. Anticipate trouble before it begins. What do you do if you come over a hill on a 2-lane road and you find someone passing in your lane? What are your options? First of all, slow down. Move to the right side of your lane, then pull as far off the road as possible. In that split second, you have to make a decision, so look for an escape route. think about your options before you ever get on the road. Expect the unexpected, leave space to escape dangerous situations, and give yourself an out. Different driving environments present different sets of dangers. In city driving, there is traffic congestion with stop-and-go traffic. You must be ready to brake at any time. In these kinds of driving conditions, gauge the flow of traffic and avoid unnecessary lane changes. Watch out for buses, cars pulling into traffic, and pedestrians. Rural roads are twice as dangerous as all others because of narrow, windy roads, limited shoulders, trees, and utility poles. Rural driving dangers include slow-moving vehicles, livestock or wildlife on the road, sharp turns, and steep hills. Passing is more difficult. All these should be warning signs to proceed with caution. Sometimes your problems have more to do with who you share the road with than the road itself. Be aware when you are on the road, not only of your own vehicle, but those around you as well. Tailgaters are a problem, often a dangerous one. They may lean on the horn or flash their headlights continuously. They may endanger other vehicles with sudden lane changes, cutting off other drivers, or braking suddenly to deliberately obstruct others. Verbal abuse or even physical assaults can result from encounters with these out-of-control drivers.
Sometimes you may see drivers in your rearview mirror switching lanes erratically or approaching you at a high rate of speed, and you should never panic. Try to put on your turn signal first and move to the right when it's safe to do so. Sometimes if you're able to see the license plate of that person that's driving erratically, it's always a good idea to dial 911 and notify the local police, because those kind of people, we would like to try to apprehend them and take them off of the road so they don't hurt anyone.
If you find yourself threatened by an erratic or negligent driver, remain calm and do not react with similar behavior. Don't speed up, let the tailgater pass. Don't contest the right of way or try to race another car during a merge. Your ability to employ evasive driving maneuvers depends to a large degree on how much time and distance you have allowed yourself. So remember again to give yourself space. Sometimes your only option is to brake as quickly as possible.
Just remember to try to look as far down the road as possible so that way you're able to avoid hazards before they're immediately in front of you. Try not to slam on the brakes because you may possibly lose control of your vehicle, but apply the brakes and try to look to the left or to the right for an escape route to avoid that hazard.
Slow down more at first using harder brake pressure. Then after the car responds, you can ease up. This gives you more room if something goes wrong and more time to make adjustments. You may be able to steer your way out of trouble if you have the time, distance, and control to do so. When all lanes are full, drive onto the shoulder of the road if you can do so safely. Sometimes your options for evasion are severely limited.
When you're driving on the freeway, there may be times you may see an object on the road, as far as maybe a cardboard box or a piece of wood, something along those lines. And the best thing to do is to drive through that object or drive over it instead of taking an erratic lane change to try to avoid the object, because there's a possibility you may lose control of your vehicle and cause a major injury accident.
These are decisions that must be made in a split second. To prepare for them, you should imagine what you would do, how you would react to an emergency situation before you find yourself in trouble. If you are involved in a collision, here are some things you should know. Failure to stop at the scene of a crash is against the law. You could be charged with hit and run, a felony. Get your car out of the traffic lane and away from any debris left on the road. Turn on your hazard lights to warn oncoming cars. In some cases, there may be people who need medical help. Do not move victims unless their location puts them in immediate danger. Moving an injured person could make matters worse. This does not mean you can't help out with first aid if you're able, or by calling for an ambulance. If you have a cell phone, call 911, stay with the victims until help arrives. Not all collisions involve serious injuries, but all require an exchange of information. Names, addresses, vehicle registration numbers, license plate and driver's license numbers. Car insurance information is also necessary. Company name and policy numbers and contact information. This is not the time to figure out who was at fault. Simply get as much information about the other vehicle as possible and stay calm. Make notes to yourself about what happened. If you have a camera handy, take photos of the crash scene. Try to find witnesses and get contact numbers. Wait for a law enforcement officer to arrive and fill out a report. Even if an accident report has been filled out at the scene, you should immediately report it to your insurance company. Almost all car crashes are caused by driver error. The most common causes are speeding, failure to give the right-of-way, failure to obey traffic laws, improper turning, following too closely, and perhaps most dangerous of all, driving under the influence.
You have your license on you?
There's no topic of greater importance to young drivers than that of drinking and driving.
Okay. How much you got to drink tonight?
I had 1 beer with dinner.
1 beer.
Traffic accidents are the leading cause of death for people under 25. Half of all those accidents are alcohol related. Driving under the influence undercuts the very skills we have been talking about, the ones that ensure safe driving. It affects your vision, your attention span, and your depth perception. Your physical reflexes and coordination decline. Your reaction time is slower and your mind is less alert. Drivers who drink and drive tend to overcompensate, react sluggishly, steer erratically, and lose focus on what's happening around them. In severe cases, drivers can black out. Drunk drivers have too much confidence in their own abilities at the time when these abilities are most impaired. Drunk drivers try to run a yellow light or pass a car when there's not enough room. They take chances they would normally not risk. The legal definition of drunk driving derives from measuring the percentage of alcohol in your bloodstream. Blood alcohol content of more than 0.1% is considered legally drunk in most states, 0.08% in others. How many drinks would it take to reach a 0.1 level? It depends on amount of alcohol consumed over what period of time, whether you had eaten before or during drinking, and whether your drinks were carbonated. Your body weight, whether you are a man or a woman. The faster you drink, the more your blood alcohol level rises. Food will slow down the absorption of the alcohol, while carbonated mixers will speed it up. The larger you are, the more liquid you have in your body to dilute the alcohol content, and men have a higher percentage of water than women. It doesn't get much more straightforward than this. Don't drive drunk. But let's look at specific ways to avoid what can be a life-ending catastrophe. The most obvious way to prevent drunk driving is to make the personal commitment not to drink and drive. Of all the reasons to avoid alcohol, driving is surely one of the best. Drinking while driving is illegal and dangerous. You can also prevent drunk driving by keeping friends from driving drunk. As the saying goes, friends don't let friends drink and drive.
There's a few things you can do to avoid being arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. One thing is you can call a taxi to come pick you up from either a party or a social event. You can also have a designated driver, so just have one person not drink for that night and to drive everyone home, and call a friend or a family member. If you have a friend who you believe is under the influence of alcohol and attempts to drive a vehicle, so those are a few alternatives you have instead of being arrested for DUI, because you're probably better off taking a ride with a taxi than taking a ride with me.
I know. Well, we're trying to get done as fast as I can. Keep your hands down to your sides and count your steps out loud. 1.
Arrests for drunk driving come with severe penalties. It's a criminal offense that can be financially ruinous. Costs include the impounding of your car, court costs, lawyer fees, and mandatory education programs. That's not even counting the cost of living and working without a car if your license is suspended or revoked, or your skyrocketing insurance rates. And think about the emotional pain and social embarrassment to you and your family that a DUI conviction would bring. Some communities have a zero-tolerance policy for underage drivers.
If you're under the age of 21 and you have any alcohol in your system, your license will be suspended immediately and you will be arrested. Because if you're under 21, you cannot have any alcohol in your system. You can also be arrested for driving under the influence of drugs. Alcohol and drugs are treated the same as far as driving under the influence.
In other words, you don't have to be drunk to be arrested. In fact, you can be driving illegally without even taking a drink. Prescription drugs and over-the-counter medicines such as cough medicines and pain relievers may make you legally impaired. Other drugs that affect the mind and body include depressants, narcotics, and hallucinogens. These drugs can cause even greater effects when combined with alcohol.
.021, way under the legal limit.
Remember, you're responsible for what you do with 3,000 pounds of metal cruising along the street. You're responsible not only for your safety and the safety of the people riding with you, but for the safety of the other people sharing the road. It's also true that not everyone sharing the road is as conscientious as you. The main safety measure you can take when sharing the road with a drunk driver is to maintain a safe distance. Don't pass unless you have to, and if you do, maintain a wide berth. Don't follow too closely. Always use the 3-second rule we talked about earlier, even 3 seconds plus, so you can stop safely. Be alert. If you notice that a car is straddling the center line, weaving, making wide turns, stopping abruptly, or responding slowly to traffic signals, the driver may be impaired. If the impaired driver is coming up behind you, pull over into another lane or even onto the side of the road if necessary. If it appears that an oncoming car is crossing into your lane, pull over to the roadside, sound the horn, and flash your lights. If you see a driver who you think is an accident waiting to happen, get a description of the car, including license plate number, and contact the police. Remember, alcohol is a factor in almost half of all fatal motor vehicle crashes. Don't become part of this statistic. You are responsible for your future, so choose wisely. It's your life. To be a good defensive driver, you need to heighten your awareness of everything happening around you while driving. As always with defensive driving, be alert, maintain a safe distance, give the right of way, obey traffic laws. If you start developing good defensive driving habits early and realize that every time you get in a car there is a risk involved, you decrease your chances of being involved in a costly and dangerous collision, and you increase your chances of having a great ride. There are a lot of careless drivers out there on the road, so stay focused, drive defensively, and drive safe. See ya.